Copyright Stanford University, all rights reserved.
So welcome to AIMS Entrepreneur Postdoc Panel, and actually the first day of the E-Week at Stanford. And AIMS is the Association of Industry-Minded Postdocs, and our aim is to bridge between the postdoc community and the industry and entrepreneurship at the Silicon Valley, and actually to help all of you, postdocs and non-postdoc, to reach your dreams for entrepreneurship. And so as all of you are here and you're all exposed to entrepreneurship all the time, we thought it would be really encouraging to give you some role models that we have here that are postdoc past and current postdocs, and they will share their point of view and all their experience with you. And I would like to start by asking them to introduce themselves.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Mickey Curtis. I moved here to Stanford about 3 years ago now to do my postdoc in bioengineering with Steve Quake, working on some virology projects, sequencing the very complex landscapes, genomic landscapes that viruses occupy. And then I guess my story, then I joined AIMS, which is this group during my year and a half on campus as a postdoc. Somewhere about a year and a half ago, last summer, together with, at the time, graduate student in the lab, Dmitry Pushkarev, we figured out that what we were working on could make a lot of sense in industry, and then ended up starting a company. We ran the company in San Francisco, grew the team a little bit, got some early customers. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about the technology itself, which is pretty cool later on. And so we ran the company for about a year independently, and then sold it to Illumina about 2 months ago. So I'm now an Illumina employee, working even harder than before on really bringing it quickly to market now and making the impact with that technology.
Good evening. My name is Sanjay Som. I moved to the Bay Area 2 years ago. I've just finished my postdoc at NASA Ames in Mountain View 2 weeks ago. And I am now attempting to go full-time with a nonprofit. And I hope to share with you the joys as well as the challenges that come with that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nargis Banaswadi. I was a master's and then PhD student at Stanford. I graduated in 2010 with PhD in electrical engineering, and then stayed as a postdoc for about 10 months, and then started my company, Bina Technologies. And we are building software and computing platforms for analysis of DNA sequencing data. And I'm very happy to be here today and share my story with you guys.
Good evening. My name is Milton Yu. I was a postdoc in Lichen Low Lab in Stanford. So the Benchwise idea started in the or now it's called Ignite at Stanford from last year. And so we are a Yelp for life science research products. Our mission is to build a platform where scientists can share their knowledge of products and therefore save their time that they can't waste it on either wrongly purchased or maybe ill-used products. So our goal is to make scientists' life a little bit better. So I'll be happy to share my experience of starting up this website with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heejun Ra. I've been at Stanford for a while, so I did my master's PhD here in electrical engineering and started my postdoc in the School of Medicine. And me and 2 other co-founders initially started Skin Deep Diagnostics Incorporated, and we actually incorporated about 3 months ago. So it's a biotech startup in the general area of medical devices, and we're in stealth mode right now, so I can't really talk about the technical details, but I would love to share what my experiences were at Stanford up to now and what it's been like.
I guess I can start. I was not planning to start a company, actually. I was at a conference giving a talk, like most of you have done, probably. And part of the message in the talk was to state that there, in the division of space exploration, one would need a symbol of international unity in exploring space, as opposed to having all the astronauts wearing the individual country flags. It'd be great to have like a symbol that represents Earth. And so I had good feedback from that presentation, but thought nothing much more of it. And that same afternoon, there was a big plenary session at the conference. So it was like 2,000 people in one auditorium, with very important people in the panel, and one of them was the director of the European Space Agency. And somebody asked him a question: which flag should be put back on the moon when humanity returns to it? And he said, all the flags of all the countries. I was like, that doesn't seem like a very bright idea. So I raised my hands, like, hey. And then I was given the microphone. I was like, so what about this flag? I had one with me, and his eyes went huge because he thought I was going to pull out like a free Tibet or something. But I pulled out the flag that it was just a picture of Earth. You've probably all seen it. It's called the Blue Marble. It was taken by the Apollo 17 astronauts when they were coming back from the moon in 1972. It was a blue background. And I showed him that. And then I showed it to the entire audience, and the entire 2,000 people started to clap. I was like, I felt really, really strong about it. And then I went to the podium and gave the director the flag. And then at the end of the session, we had a chat a little bit, and he really liked the idea. There's, of course, many political barriers, but philosophically, it's a very powerful statement. And so I went home from the conference and kind of stared at that flag, and it's just like, how far can I push this idea? What must I do for this to become reality? I was drawn to it. And so I just went online on one evening and kind of looked, well, how do I start a nonprofit? I was living in Seattle back then, and incorporated the nonprofit in 2009. And then last year in 2012, we got our 501c3 status, so a recognized nonprofit at the federal level. And there's been many events since then to have made it grow to this stage, one of which being in a dive bar with friends talking about how we are scientists in the middle of a economic crisis, and it's really hard to find a job, and what could we do to make our own jobs? And one of which was to start a science institute under this philosophy of international unity. So the way to do that would be to have an institute that's without walls, purely on the internet. And then I shared my vision with these guys, and they were on board, and the institute now is running. We can submit grants to NSF, to NASA, to wherever. And so we're pushing this forward. So it was just one single event that cascaded a lot of other ones, and just talking with friends kind of grew the vision of the organization. So I should probably stop there.
I think my story was completely opposite. It was not a single event that triggered this thought or idea. It was several years being at Stanford, working in the intersection of computation, high-performance computing, analytics, and systems biology. My background was mostly in high-performance computing when I came here, but very early on I started working with Professor Gary Nolan in medical school and Professor Wing Wong, chair of statistics department, and got involved in solving very interesting computational problems related to cancer and systems biology, and it was just fascinating for me. I was sure at that time that is the problem I want to spend the rest of my career in. So the problem and kind of the technology we're developing was very fascinating and exciting for me. But the idea of starting a company happened later in my grad school, when maybe 1 or 2 years before graduation. I thought, I did an internship in IBM, and it was a little bit boring working for a very big organization. So that was kind of a self-realization that I wouldn't enjoy that much working for big companies, although I was doing similar work in terms of science and technology. And I always loved, kind of working with passionate small teams and like undertake challenging projects. So being at Stanford, you also see a lot of role models and inspiring stories of starting something. And then I attended SIE program, the Summer Institute of Entrepreneurship, in 2009, when I was starting to think about maybe I can start a company. That was very educational, and I thought it's possible. And then I think early 2010, I was sure I want to do that. We incorporated the company with my 2 of the professors I was working with, and then spent about a year to really think about business model and fundraising, and then officially quit Stanford and became full-time at BINA in April 2011.
So the idea for Benchwise was literally meant to solve my own problem. So can I ask a raise of hand, how many people here are life scientists? Yeah, like I expected. So I'm a life scientist. I use antibodies, and there was this time a year ago that I was looking for a flag antibody, something the most common thing ever, and I couldn't find the right one for my sample. And I found that just insane, because if you look for a camera, if you look for a restaurant, there's a gazillion of reviews. How come there's never ever a review for an antibody for this common thing? So this is where I got started. And then, of course, we went to I present the idea, and somehow there are a group of people happen to like it, so we develop it, and then it launched from there. So right now we're expanding really fast, and we are hopefully helping lots of scientists with their research.
For skin deep diagnostics, for myself, I didn't really think about starting a startup when I started my postdoc. I was sort of in the middle. I was in engineering, but interested in solving medical biological problems. But the project itself started as a side project, so it wasn't a main project that was funded or anything. So my co-founder, Irfan Ali Khan, and I sort of, with a collaborator, tried something out in the lab, and we got some unexpected results. And after thinking about it, it was like really exciting, and this could be real. This could have a potential to impact a lot of lives. And so that's when we started to get excited and sort of develop the project out in the lab. And about a year later, we had Emilio Gonzalez, another postdoc within the group. So this has all been in Chris Contag's group where I'm in. And yeah, then the three of us, sort of the chemistry really worked out, and we started getting excited about the potential of the project. And that's how it sort of took off. But for myself personally, I didn't know what entrepreneurship really entailed and whether I would be a good fit for it. So I've been involved with AIMS when it started. And for the 2 years that I've been in the leadership team, I've got to meet a lot of people, the entrepreneurs and also investors, and sort of got to know the ecosystem. And that really inspired me and really, spoke to me that I really want to go down this path and give it the best that I've got. So that's how I got into it, and I'm happy I made that choice.
A couple of sentences. So in my case, it was pretty much the work that I did in my postdoc and the work that Dimitri did in his grad studies. We just ended up collaborating within the lab on that, and I was working on small viruses. He was small genomes of viruses. He was working on genomes of huge, very complex organisms, and just putting the technologies that we developed for those two very different problems into one thing. And we just looked at that and thought it would be a good idea to try and commercialize that and make the impact by doing that rather than going the academic publish route. And so it happened pretty quickly, just taking our research and taking it out of campus.
My question is addressed to Milton. I could see the threshold of that the other postdocs on the panel had to cross to address their specific need. With your technology or with your company, I could think of myself trying to address that issue and probably could do a competing platform. Could you comment on if you're facing any such competition or how we are addressing such a situation?
You just asked a typical VC question. So surprisingly, there's actually not that much competition in this space. I think part of the reason because you want someone who had the crossroads of knowing life science, really know life science, and also know some of technology. And there's just not that many group of people who actually have that sort of feature. Now, regarding to if Galton want to start a website today, my philosophy is always that for and most, I want to solve a problem. If we can solve a problem together, let's solve a problem together. If you can deliver a solution that is so much better than mine, by all means, go ahead, solve it. But guess what? I think mine's better.
I guess if you're interested in the nonprofit world, I would recommend start early in grad school or in your postdoc, because it's nice to have a salary, which you have for a few years as a postdoc as you develop your idea and make contacts and convince people that your idea is worth it. And it's paying off now, but it's because I've been working. I had my postdoc for 2 years, so I had an income, but that's on my side time. A lot of my evenings, and not all my weekends, but a good chunk of them, spent developing the idea and talking to people and convincing others to join the team. And that takes time because you have to develop personal relationships, right, with people, particularly in the nonprofit world. So start early.
So in my case, I think, and it's probably true for many other things, you basically acquire the knowledge that's required. So the main thing is, when do you do this step out of your comfort zone and start doing something different? And it initially you learn a lot, and then if you end up going to 10 panels like that, the 11th is just giving you a little bit more, et cetera, and at some stage you feel that, okay, you know enough of how this should be done, and then step and do that that thing. Obviously, at that stage, you should have the team and the technology, the idea, the minimal required elements. But when the time comes, you basically know that you know enough about that, and you can confidently walk at least a few steps forward. You don't have to know everything about the next 5 years, but just the first few steps to be confident that you acquired enough knowledge, and those forums and other things, courses, etc., that happen here on campus are very useful in getting that knowledge.
I echo what others said, that start early for networking and finding co-founders, building your support network, finding mentors and advisors. Really take advantage of the time that you are in grad school and also a postdoc. You have some free time, you have your weekends you can spend on building an idea. It usually takes a year or two to really bring an abstract idea and create a business idea out of it. Don't think it happened in a month or two. It usually at least a year until you build a network that really helps you get started and quit your daytime job to be officially at your startup. But if you want to wait until you have enough information to do it, you will never start, because you will never have enough information. And startups are about a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risk, and especially technology startups, it's a very hard problem because you're dealing with innovation and dealing with a very dynamic market, very competitive landscape. Everything will be different 1 year from now. So if you want to base your startup based on the information today to start something next year, it will not work. So it needs a lot of courage, but at the same time, persistence and hard work. And I think the time in grad school and postdoc actually is very helpful, both in maturing the idea as well as initial fundraising. That's my 2 cents.
So I would definitely echo what the other panelists just said. Also, I will mention that, so because my startup is a little different, so we're essentially a technology/website startup. So actually go back to Galton's earlier question, is that speed is everything here. So once you have the idea, you gotta move as fast as you can. And that involves just talking to as many people as you can, getting as much advice as you can, and try to get people on board with you and work with you, form a team. So.
So for me and our startup, so since we're in the medical devices arena, it's a lot more complicated in terms of trying to figure out what your product is and how you could get to the market. Partially because you need a lot of infrastructure, and that translates to you need more funding to get your product out, and also because you have, in most cases, FDA regulation, which is there for a good reason, but nonetheless, it's very opaque and sometimes very difficult to understand, even from professionals who are in that field for decades. So that was sort of our team sort of struggled with trying to figure that out, and we've went to like different courses and trying to meet with different people to get feedback and so on. So for us, it took actually a much longer time than we thought in terms of even forming sort of the idea market business model and get enough confidence to say yes, like we love it, we think we should go for it, and push forward. And also there's IP issues as well. So for biotech and the medtech arena, I just want to, my 2 cents is that it is very difficult to get wrap your head around it, but it is also very rewarding. So if you really want, know the problem that you want to solve, and Stanford is a great area with great place with a lot of resources if you are proactive about learning and reaching out to people. There is a way to wrap your head around it, and again, sort of at the critical time point, you'll make that jump, and it's sort of getting your team all on board to push forward. Okay, so I'll take a stab at it. So actually, there are like lots of wonderful resources, but just to name them, maybe I would say the top 3 was first of all, for me, like Ames was a great resource. So I was involved in the leadership team and really just talking to speakers, getting people connected to postdocs and how we think and how we want to impact also in the industry area. That was a great experience in terms of networking and sort of learning the landscape. Secondly, I took advantage of a lot of courses in the more workshops in the design school, which was very helpful in product design, sort of that thinking. And also seminars and workshops in the business school were also very helpful in terms of framing, having that framework. And I know for my co-founder, Irfan, he took a lot of actual courses at the D school and business school. And I sort of did like secondary learning through him. So to really get a sense of like business intuition and so on. So those are my top 3. And there are lots of other like specific courses out there that it all depends on what you really want. And remember, these are like resources and everything. Those are all tools to realize your idea. So just, I would advise just go out and find what you really need. Use your precious time very preciously, and it'll be out there. So that's my experience.
Okay, so I think the entrepreneur resource Stanford is the best ever you can get for entrepreneurship. In terms of classes, there's all kinds of resource class lectures offered in B school. So like I mentioned that we started, get lots of launching energy from the pre-program, and it taught us very fundamental business skills. But more important than those classes is actually the people sitting right around you and the connections these people around you bring to you. And for some reason, people in Stanford are great. Okay, so recently we were able to recruit some people into our team from the life science postdoc community, and every one of them not only knows so much about life science, they're so business ready. It's just amazing. So I think these people around you, they are great resource. And for instance, from the pre-program, we were able to keep connections with the professors from B school and for connections with the VC we introduced to founders B school. Those connections into the valley also was tremendous help to us.
Totally agree. I think it's all about people, and you can really no place in the earth you can find so many people passionate about entrepreneurship and also related to what you do. And it's not only for recruiting for your team, but also recruiting mentors for yourself. So there are a lot of good classes, as other panelists mentioned, both in business school, MSNE, D school, which I took some of them. But I think most important is connecting with people who can be your mentors, because it's a journey, and especially if it's your first time, every step of it you're gonna face with a lot of unknowns. And if you can have someone who have gone that way once, both like technical entrepreneurs as well as business people, I think they can be very valuable. For me, I really didn't I think appreciate this resource as much as I should have. When I did my first fundraising, some of my angel investors became very good resource in terms of advice and mentorship to me. But now when I think back, I think when I was taking the courses at business school, I had a chance to actually do more networking at that time. So networking and talking to people and recruiting is one of the best things you can do while you're at Stanford.
Boy, you guys are really lucky to be at Stanford. So many resources. So I went to school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and there's a small entrepreneurial spirit, not even close to what you guys have here. So really take advantage of it. I want to echo what Nargis said, that people are important, but it's more than that. Like starting a company is a huge leap of faith, and it can be scary. You have to really search deeply in your own self-confidence, whether you can handle it or not. And so for me, what really helped me was attending the pre-program last year, because it's at the Stanford Business School, which is now Ignite, and it gives you the overview of marketing, operations, strategy, etc., and just the knowledge of not in depth, but knowing the vocabulary, right, and understanding the business mindset that you get from the professors who are teaching you and from your colleagues in the classroom when you start developing this business idea, really helped boost my personal confidence in myself to run a company from all the different angles, not only on the vision, but also in the operations and dealing with payroll and accounting and people skills, etc. All that comes together in pre. So people I agree, is really important, but you have to think about yourself too, and what does it take for you to take that leap of faith? And so building that self-confidence through classes, through opportunities you have, especially here at Stanford, is really amazing.
So I think for me it was a combination of both, a little bit of courses and more structured learning, so you know the language and you know what it's all about. And then this close support group, which was AIMS for me, just meeting every week and some workshops and organizing some events was very important. And lastly, the basically interviewing people that went that step, that road ahead of you. So for every step that we went through the company, I would find someone, or typically more than one, a few, and just sit with them and try to understand their perspective, their story, and blend all this information together. So that recent experience from someone is very useful in translating that information from courses, etc., into the realities of what's happening right now, right here. That was my experience.
Hi, I have a question. So I believe, so what time, how long do you recommend that you incubate? In the sense that, one of you said that we need a better finished product so that we can sell it in the market, or we can convince the VCs or something like that. And on the other hand, if we actually go towards such a finished product, we'll be spending a lot of time and effort, and so we may have to jump in full time, take a leap of faith, like you said. On the other hand, we could work part-time, still in the labs, and keep earning, support yourself, and prolong the whole process out. So what is the right balance? Where do I stop working on my regular job, take a leap of faith and go dive wholeheartedly into what I believe in?
Maybe I want to take a quick one sentence of that. There's at this school probably they use it a lot. Kind of quick prototyping. If you think this may be good enough, go pitch it to a VC. Not your first one. Just check it out. Check the waters. You may figure out that 10 things are completely out of place, or you may figure out that you're nearly there. So don't sit kind of in your lab for forever until it's perfect. On the other hand, if you go out, don't reach out for your best bet the first thing. Always have some kind of dry run before you're ready to do it for real. So it's somewhere in between. That's as it.
Are you in?
Was making profit within 6 months, and I want to know what was the gross sales, and how many clients did you have in those the first month, and then
Okay, I have the finance Excel sheet. You can open it here. Here's the P&L, and let me answer that kind of. The company was very small, so there were 4 of us at that stage, and so when you have 4 people running a company that is profitable, especially given that the product was and still is something that people really, really need and are willing to pay, that was a unique situation where right out of the door, people are willing to pay for that because there's a huge need for long and accurate reads. And so that was an easy. Yeah. It increased, and we had to, and we right now, obviously, of course, have to kind of tunnel a little bit, and we cannot take any more customers, early access customers. It's. I think maybe let me kind of shift that to another thing is in terms of resources. One of the great resources here is also the scientific community, and so connections that you get through different professors on campus, and they can tell you here, I know that person there has a huge problem with something that you can solve for them.
did you do any marketing?
No. We stayed completely stealth mode, off the radar. Really made sure that nobody except those customers that we contacted and had under the contract that they're not publishing the data. Nobody knew about us.
How many customers did you
have? About. I'd say 24 customers, yeah, and that's that's where it becomes really hard to scale up as you're looking at the marketing, sales, support team right now, all the rest. So it's really hard to scale up from there. Yeah.
How many customers do you have now?
About the same. Well, we didn't really. I mean, I don't want to. We didn't scale. We didn't. There's a huge amount of interest, obviously, since it became more public, or it became public. So we're not taking any more customers right now until we can open it up to everybody.
Thank you.
A question to everyone on the panel. What is your advice regarding co-founders? What is the best time to bring in a co-founder? And also, do you recommend a technical co-founder or a business co-founder?
So I took a co-founder after 6 months, and I think they need both of those characteristics, right? Because they are so early on, they're part of the wave, right? They're part of building the organization, part of the business, but also part of the science behind it. What I was particularly looking for was people who had really great communication skills, not only to communicate. So because we're a nonprofit, we spend a lot of effort communicating our science to the public, but also you need a strong communication team within the founders, because stuff is going to hit the fan and you're going to have arguments, and you want to be able to clearly have people that are able to argue with you, not against you, right? So for me, communication skills were a prime importance in selecting co-founders.
So I co-founded Bina with 3 professors who were all my advisors at Stanford and UC Berkeley. They didn't leave their day job, of course, but they were very instrumental in helping me build the initial team. We hired some people from their labs. It was Professor John Warsnick from UC Berkeley and Professor Wong and Professor Gary Nolan from Stanford. And they were on the board of advisory and 2 of them on board of directors. And they were still up to date. They are very helpful. They are hands-on in terms of strategy and even product development. My main advisor, Wing Wong, was my PhD advisor, who is very hands-on in Bina at the moment too. But I didn't have like a typical co-founder who really I can share day-to-day, challenges of building a company, and that has been very difficult. So I think having a co-founder is a very good idea, but it also can be challenging. It's a very personal thing. You need to look at yourself and see what are the things you want to complement yourself with. If you are a really scientific, technical person, if you hate doing fundraising or dealing with the investors or looking at accounting and finances, then probably you need to have a business co-founder. But if you think if you are a mix of all and you really want to be in control, you want to stay as the CEO, then maybe you don't need that much of a business co-founder. Usually startups based on technology, disruptive technology, the first year is all about the product. There will not be that much sale or marketing anyhow. But if you can bring someone with industry experience to complement with you have all the fresh knowledge of the technology, but someone who has sold to this market, knows the dynamics and the direction, that can be definitely very helpful. But it's like a marriage, as they say. So you really need to. You are going to spend a lot of time with that person. So you need to be very sure about that decision. It can make or break the business. And usually they say 50-50 is not a good idea because it creates more tension. So it's good that at the end of the day, there will be one major person who is really heavily vested. And I think it's a great idea to have co-founders, but you cannot also wait for that to happen. Like many other things, startups, you need to push many fronts in parallel: fundraising, recruiting, product, all of that. And whenever one happens, it helps with the others.
So can I ask what kind of startup you want to start? Fintech. Okay, so it's more technology heavy. Okay, so I would only talk about experience from my experience of starting the website. So the co-founder is a great question. The real question is not when, it's why you want a co-founder. So for me personally, the reason I need a co-founder is because I need someone who can soldier on when I'm so frustrated that I almost want to give up. And also I want someone to constantly tell me that this idea sucks, you're stupid. So getting honest feedback and also have someone to share your passion is my foremost criteria for finding co-founder. Now, second to that is ideally you can find someone who will complement your skill set, technology, communication, those kind of things. And also, if everybody don't mind, I want to inject something here that if anyone sitting here interested in gaining more experience in communication or maybe learning some experience outside the lab, please free to talk to me. We have all kinds of positions here that we'll be happy to take anyone interested in joining us making these great products better.
In terms of co-founders, I think it has to be really organic. So you can't, same with relationships, you can't force a relationship. So in our case, it's sort of evolved within the lab, but it has to work, and what works is different for every team. But I do echo the other panelists here is that first and foremost, the most important thing between co-founders is communication and trust. Communication, you really, you're going to be with your co-founders all the time and making really important decisions. So you have to be able to be brutally honest with each other and disagree when you disagree, and sort of be the cheerleader, take turns in doing that. So when we started off, we had 3 initial co-founders, and currently we're 2 co-founders who are mainly currently continuing the company. So so in terms of roles, so our sort of role currently is Irfan is the CEO and I am the CTO as co-founders. But really, in this case, for me, what was important is also a co-founder where you can learn from each other, because you can have roles, but especially at the early stages of a startup, you both have to really do everything, sort of wear multiple hats and pitch in at all times. So again, going back to communication, having a really good communication rapport, and secondly, it's really great for a strong team to have complementary skills. So, the CEO tends to have more like the business side and business intuition. And also, if it's also a technology heavy company, somebody who's very knowledgeable on the technology side.
Can you please comment on IP issues with Stanford? How does it go? So how did Stanford react to your wish to take it to the spin-off? How was the negotiation with them?
Yeah, so the process is pretty, the good news is you're not the first one, or we're not the first one. It's the process is well set on how that works. In our case, it was easy. All the technology was developed on campus, and so we disclosed and filed the provisional patent before we even started the company. And then the way it works, you then, after you disclose and Stanford files the patent, you basically knock on the other side of OTL's kind of office as a company and say, I'd like to license that patent. And then the scary part is they have to now market it widely. So all your big competitors and everybody now sees not the entire patent, but just the abstract. And the other companies can say, yeah, I'd like to license that. And if that happens, then there's a little bit of negotiation. I know from stories that OTL tends to give the license to the inventors if they show, and they check that thoroughly to see that really you have the funds and you have the ability, etc. So they don't end up licensing the technology to someone who will not execute and really make the impact using the technology. So once that process is done, then it's basically down to negotiating the deal terms. And again, there's a subset of parameters there, but they do that, I guess, a few dozen times a year. So it's not a huge deal. Still, it takes ages and tons of money on attorney fees, etc., to negotiate the details. But at the end of the day, we licensed it, and that's maybe for the start. Kind of when do you actually do this step out of campus? For IP heavy or IP important companies, I would suggest don't do your first step before you absolutely are sure that you're going to get an exclusive license on that technology, because because I don't know if they would negotiate with an entity that doesn't exist. So yeah, you first incorporate, then you knock on their door, and that's a long process, by the way, until they give you the actual exclusive license. So this is something you should start as early as possible.
I can share my experience as well. I think disclosing to OTL and creating a patent while you're at Stanford is a question. It's not always given. It depends on the technology. Stanford would complain if you go and patent it later, but if you never patent it, no one will complain. And a lot of technologies, for example, software technologies, patent doesn't matter much. It is not that much protection coming with the patent, so you might as well just not patent it, because it creates a lot of trouble. You need to spend a lot of time with OTL to do the disclosure, and then later a lot of time and negotiation to get the license back to your company. But if it is something like what Mickey was working on, which is the patent actually matters a lot in life sciences, usually is the case, then I think it's safer to patent with Stanford and then later try to license it. And usually they are very friendly, kind of collaborative with the inventors. In my case, one of the core technologies that we developed at Bina Some part of it, I was working on it when I was a postdoc because I was still fundraising, but I didn't want to slow down the development, so I had to start working on it and along with my advisor. But the product didn't finish, and we finished it, the design and implementation at BINA maybe 10 months later. But when we wanted to file the patent, we went back to OTL and we gave them the ownership, half of the ownership. So at the moment, like BINA owns the patent, and also Stanford owns the patent. So we didn't need to go and get the license. We owned it, but we also gave them ownership. So both of us have the right to use this technology. And that's another way to do it. If you think the technology is half-baked and you're going to finish it when you have left Stanford, you have the option actually to own it yourself, but then you have to give ownership to
Thank you. This question is for everyone, at least for all profit companies. What type of companies did you initially register? Did you ever have to change from, say, an LLC to a CCorp to appease investors? Or I was just kind of curious about, advice to people who are about to start companies. What would you recommend? What route going with?
I think I just got advice from the lawyers, and they said just go for the typical route, CCorp, and we did in Delaware, which is more corporate friendly. It makes it easier later to raise VC money.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard too from lawyers. So.
Yes, so Skin Deep Diagnostics is also a C Corp in Delaware. But, the other thing is your lawyers are important. So do discuss, I think, depending on the startup and what stage you're in and where you see it going, it can change a bit, the advice. So, yeah, I would leave it up to your discussion with your corporate lawyer.
This question, Mickey, congratulations on the acquisition. I heard about it earlier this year. My question was, I think when I looked at Molecular, it's perfect blueprint of how a startup should incubate at an incubator or at a university like Stanford. My only question would be, you guys were so early, so stealthy, and to me, it was a little bit too early to sell at a point where you guys were. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of questions on that front. I'm just curious what made you not, go all the way, even like Series A.
So, it's always a decision, and more than ever, I'm happy now that I see what it really takes to bring that technology to market in a way that's stable. We had those two paths. We did have a term sheet that we signed for Series A, so that was one, confident path to walk down. And then we looked at that, and basically on my to-do list for 2013 was mainly to raise, to bring on board the marketing team, the support, do the manufacturing, distribution, etc. All those things that basically would be building up something that exists in other companies already, because our product is not a product that works with no underlying sequencer, so you would need a sequencer anyway. And so the decision was pretty easy once that, and the synergy is obvious. And so I think that's basically driving quickly the technology to market by teaming up with someone who has all those distribution, manufacturing, quality control channels and experience was an easy decision.
We talked a little bit about how the dynamics change once you bring on a co-founder. Can you also talk about a little bit how decisions change when you bring in investors?
I cannot really talk to that because our investors were all, the series round that we did was a convertible note. So there were no other shareholders, not even information rights to them. It did change, our decision-making process did change because suddenly you have a bunch of very experienced people working for you, basically, because they want to make it a success. But at the end of the day, the decision was still in the hands of the founding team. So that's... sorry.
No investors in nonprofit.
It all depends on your investor. In fact, I have been doing fundraising for my first venture round the last couple of months, and I've talked to several VCs and very different personalities and cultures. Some of the VCs want to just come and take control, and they have this belief that entrepreneurs need to be replaced, and they know how to direct the ship. And there are some that are really completely different. They are there to help you build a company, not to control it. My experience the last 18 months, I have been working with angel investors. 2 of them are serving as board of directors as well, have been extremely supportive. Actually, one of them, my best resources. I mean, without them, it was so difficult to bring the company to this stage. They helped me with a lot of advice on how to build an organization, how to think about strategy and business model. They helped a lot with the fundraising that now we are doing with their connections and their credibility and support. And I think it's really important who you bring on board as an investor, because they are going to be with you in all the next steps, and you want people to learn from.
Okay, I have a question. So you've mentioned how important it is to work with your co-founders or teammates. Can you share with us one of the most memorable conflicts you've had with your teammates and how you resolve that conflict?
You mean besides equity discussion? So I wouldn't say there's any particular experience that is strikingly memorable, but I would say that that in our team, which I also think is one thing that makes our team so enjoyable to be in, is that we are very honest with each other, and periodically we have this very open session of feedbacks. So we'll talk about one thing that we like or don't like about the other person on the team. So those are very embarrassing moments to find out that someone else doesn't like what I do. But then I think the key here is that really you want to try to remove the friction from a very early stage such that it doesn't develop in something bigger. And it's never a good idea to delay a discussion of any negative feedbacks.
No, it's I can't really think about like one memorable thing, but I echo Milton in that it's there's because it's like a roller coaster going through the startup process. I'm still in the very early stage compared to the other panelists, but still it's very stressful at times, and there is like friction buildup and sort of the phase where you sense that. And that's going back to my comment on co-founders. It's really important about communication, because once you feel that buildup, you have to be able to talk about it early rather than later. It gets to a big blow up. So this can be regarding like all sorts of different things, but really, when there is a tension buildup and a friction, and a person is being sort of distant or not communicating. So being able to break that early on is, I think, very important for a co-founding team.
Oh, my question is addressed to Sanjay. Other than your really lofty goals and your ideals, what exactly sustains a nonprofit organization? This is more in terms of how do you raise the money, and how do you give your own salary? Like, what keeps you going? What are the resources available? Could you address that?
Yeah, sure. So being a nonprofit, you can tap into federal funds, private foundations, as well as individual donors. The way we're bringing most of our money now is through the Science Institute. grants that come in, we take in an overhead from it, and that overhead is used to invest into other activities we have, particularly the educational ones. And because we have such a strong effort in communicating the science, this has pleased a lot of NASA, for example, where I was a postdoc. They really value that we spend so much of our time communicating the excitement around our discipline, which is space exploration and astrobiology. And they have given us money to keep developing the platform that we've built to reach out to the people, to the general public about communicating science. So one of the main difference between for-profits and non-profits is that your mission statement as a non-profit should be broad, because that is what gives the mission statement you have is the one that you're going to give to the IRS, and so you're given the 501c3 status based on that mission statement, right? So if you give a very specific vision, like you would do in for-profit companies, then you're stuck, right? Because any other income you'll bring in, because your business plan will pivot as you grow, any income you'll bring in will not be part of that particular specific mission that you had, and so it's no longer considered tax-free income. So as a nonprofit, which is why my mission is, as you read, is very, very broad, to promote international unity in space exploration. Right? It's like really broad, and that's because within that broad vision, we can do several different things, including science, including education, including policy work, and so by spreading our wings like that, we can bring in money from different targets.
So, question for all the panelists. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently in the development of your respective ventures?
I think if I knew as much as I know now about the hardships of starting a company, I wouldn't have done it. No, I think what I would have done is educate myself sooner in what it takes to run a company in terms of all the operations. Like having done really has bootstrapped how fast the company has grown for me. And so just, getting more knowledge early would have probably would have been beneficial. But it was not a bad thing to be naive in the beginning, right? Because that's how you share your vision, your passion with people without the knowledge of the hardships that are ahead. And it's this passion that still exists, that's how you bring people in, right?
I think startups are about bootstrapping. So you never get everything right in the beginning. You always make a lot of mistakes, but you need to just push forward on everything and just learning from your mistakes. Because your resources are limited, you cannot be perfectionist in the beginning. So when I go back, and I think like 2 years ago, maybe I wish I had the strongest team or stronger team compared to what I built first. But I couldn't because I was just, the first time entrepreneur with an idea. But after, we got some traction when we built the prototype and we raised the money, I just hired the senior team on the management, people with like 10 or 20 years experience in the industry just in the last 4 months. But my initial team, which I built and I was working with them the first 12 months, they were all fresh graduates, bachelor's or master's or PhD with no work experience. And so we could have done a faster execution if we had more experience, but it's also difficult to recruit such a team when you are very, very early stage. I think startups are all about people. The decisions I regret is that when I saw a very talented person sitting in front of me and I thought, oh, maybe it's early to hire such a person, I don't have work for that person. I think if you see a great person, just hire them. You find work for them later. That's only the examples that I would regret.
So actually, my learning will be along similar lines. That I wish I talked with more people when I first started. So the Benchwise is a platform for scientists to share product knowledge. So our main users will be postdoc students. it didn't occur to me until later on that when professors from Harvard heard of it and tell me that, well, there is this initiative from NIH doing something similar. I think you guys should collaborate, and then send me talk to them. And I realized, oh, I should talk to you earlier on. And then someone from Genentech heard about what we do and then say, this is something we want to, so maybe you should introduce to Genentech as well. So have I thought about it early on? Maybe I'll talk to these people from very start, and then that can maybe help me to expand so much faster. But I want to say, like Nargis was just saying, they said, this is the fun part of startup, is you're always learning something new. I'm sure if I did this early on, I would learn something else later on. So this is where all the fun come from.
For me, it might be because our startup is very early. I honestly don't know if I could have done it any differently. So at every point in time, for me, the most important question is like, do I want to do this? Is this important for me? And as long as that answer was yes, I kept on pushing forward. So I do wish as well that I would have been exposed or thought about entrepreneurship and how, you know, the Silicon Valley works, the ecosystem is connected with more people earlier on, maybe even in grad school. But I think when you really, in everybody's life, at a certain time point, you know that, you know, I want to explore options. I need to go through with this. This means a lot to me. And I want to move forward no matter what situation exactly you might be in, which might not be ideal. So yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of things that I wish I would have known more, but again, I'm learning every day, and I'm happy I'm at where I am right now.
There is a lot of reward that comes from starting with just a vision and then building something to support that vision. So the learning process is challenging. The paperwork you have to deal with is hard, but at every step, you can turn around and see what you've accomplished. That in itself is so rewarding. Like, you see the people come in, you see the product grow, you see the organization grow. So sure, it's hard. I mean, sure, it's tough, but it's I can't emphasize enough how rewarding it is.
I think the one thing that I would have done different is, or I would do different next time, is follow more of my instincts. And really, if you see a customer that you want to fire the customer. Don't even start with them. And that investor that you fear will be the one that will waste all of your time. Don't take his money. And so just follow your gut feeling, and that's one thing that I kind of did not do enough.
So how do you assess the market for your product? Let's say if your product is something which is like with Hyojin, it's pretty unexpected. You said you had unexpected results, so maybe you know, most of the life science products come out of a known deficiency in the whole system. There's something lacking that we try to find out, and we know that people would want it. But sometimes unexpected things like this happen. Sometimes, like Milton has been building something where you are changing the landscape. How did you know? Well, this is pretty obvious, but there may be certain instances where you still do not know whether your users are going to respond back, like your consumers are going to respond. So, you know, not everyone, let's say, for example, enters their exercise minutes. I exercise for 10 minutes today, or run, but there are tons of apps for those. So how do you assess whether there is a market for you, and how much time you should invest, or how do you gear or yourself towards it?
Quick prototyping before. Let's do something, put it out.
Go out for
talk
to the VCs and
talk to the customers, not to the VCs. Put it out in the hands of a few.
What I feel is, if you talk to, well, the first thing that you do when you talk to likely friends or people you know or can reach out to, and they'll be.
So ask them for money for the product, and then this filters out all the politeness. If you send them an invoice, it's kind of, if you get back a check, you know they meant, yes, this is really useful. If they come back and say, let's collaborate, let's see, maybe we can do something together, etc., you know, they're hesitating. But that's for a product where I'm not sure this was where your question was going. That's for a product basically already what it looks more or less like, and you're looking for feedback for market validation. In some of the other cases, this is a much longer shot. So maybe others want to comment on that.
I would just say use your time when you're at Stanford to do this market research. You need to talk to many people. Once one of my advisor told me, when you talk to 100 people about your product and you got the market validation, then it's the time to start it, at least 100 people. And there can be customers, there can be industry experts, but if there is no market or if the market is going to happen 10 or 20 years from now, then it's very hard to raise money and build a company.
So for us, about a year ago around this time, I sent a survey to the ICUPD email list, asking people that, do you have trouble finding a right product for your research? And what do you do with that trouble? How do you solve it? And that was the single most, I would say, decisive moment for Benchwise. Because my biggest fear, guess what, is that nobody would respond to me. But then I got over 60 responses, like in the first 20 minutes. So I think that result demonstrate two things at the same time. One is that actually some people are troubled so much with product, they're willing to spend 3 minutes filling a survey. So that itself demonstrates a lot of the need for what we're trying to build. And the second thing, of course, is what they say in the survey, which is antibodies. Of course, everybody's hate antibodies. So then that becomes the thing we're focusing on for Benchwise. So I guess the conclusion is that always ask, do surveys, and eventually you get an answer there.
So yes, I agree with that as well. So for in the general medical devices field, again, it's not straightforward. It's like you have customers, sort of patients. Even within patients, you can think about people in the hospital, people out on the street. So definitely always, sort of frame your idea and get feedback. And also, if you're, a postdoc at Stanford and have connections, try to be in the environment that your customer would be, and it's not as easy as like sending out surveys, but definitely you can make a connection to really say go into a hospital room or go in with a physician to see what's actually being done. And sometimes it's very different. So in our case, we had we were trying to go for solving a big problem, but in terms of how that becomes a product and how that addresses a certain market can be very different. So depending on who your customer is and how how you're addressing it. So another thing is check out your competition. So what is out there and what needs are they addressing? And is there, another area that's not being addressed? So those are the two things that we focused on. And it can change, so be flexible. So what you thought that, this is the thing, this is the product, might not be the best way in.
I wanted to just add to what I said and negate myself a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to do market research and size the market because some technologies are so disruptive and new that they're going to create a new market. And many times people don't need that product yet because that market doesn't exist. And that's related to actually what we are doing. We are working on building analysis interpretation tools for genome, enabling the personalized medicine. So when we started the fundraising and initial team building, it was still it is very hard to size this market. It can be $100 billion, it can be $10 million, depending on how fast the market grows. And our company is one of the companies who are going to enable the much faster growth of this market. So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem sometimes. And if that's the case, you really need to be very close to the people who, and yourself need to have very good intuition and vision of where the industry is going and how enabling or disruptive the technology you're building is going.
We do it two ways. One of which is because we're a purely online company, the overhead that we have is very low compared to other institutes. So we run it at 10%, versus a university is 50+%, right? And the scientists that come to us tend to be ones who are really, really excited about communicating their science. And that's practically mandatory for whatever we publish. And so there are two ways to communicate science, one of which is passive, one of which is active. The passive way is you put stuff on your website. For example, whenever we publish a paper, there is an interview with the first author. There's a lay summary for the people, right? And that comes from the scientists themselves, right? So there is no EPO office that's stuck to the organization that pulls the information from the scientists to distribute it to the public. Communicating science is core to the philosophy of the organization, and that appeals to certain types of scientists. So low overhead costs, they can pay themselves more, as well as a strong philosophy of communicating science with the public.
So my question involves fundraising. I'm in the nonprofit world, but I'd be curious to hear from any of you. So I've been following the advice of the panel and talking to everyone I possibly can, and I have this list of emails of promising leads, and now I'm like, what should I do with these? What's the next step? I'd be curious to hear about the process of managing those leads, growing those relationships, particularly since I'm on a student budget, and so it's going to be hard for me to fly across the country to meet face-to-face with some of these people. And are there resources at Stanford that can help with this step?
I don't know about resources at Stanford. But I can address the personal contact thing. You don't have to fly across the country because there are so many tools out there like Skype or Google Hangout or whatever, and just regular phone call where you can interact with the people. But it is important that it's a personal interaction. It cannot be dear potential donor, right? It has to be a very personal contact where you don't use a cut and paste format for your emails, right? It has to come. If you are in the nonprofit world, that passion needs to ooze out of that email, right? And they need to feel it as much as you do. So it's really on the personal touch, and take advantage of all the free tools that are out there to be in touch with people over the internet.
So you were saying you have what, too many early contacts? That yeah, just a lot, yeah. No, so my suggestion is here: don't spread yourself too thin. Just choose a few targets. You don't need investment from 50. You need one. And so just take tier one, prioritize, take your first 5, 10, and they can be local. That's the great thing about sitting right here. Take a bike, drive up, bike up Sand Hill, and go meet them face to face. And just those top few, don't spread yourself too thin. It just takes one good shot.
So you said yours is a nonprofit startup, okay? And you're wondering if there's any resource from Stanford? Is it medical related or? Yeah,
So when I did pre, I was a little bit frustrated because it was really focused for obvious reasons for small for-profit companies. There is one professor that does nonprofit stuff, and his name is Sims, I think, Professor Sims. And so as far as I know at Stanford, in terms of nonprofit, but again, I don't know because I didn't go to school here, but as far as I know, he's the person to talk to about nonprofit stuff.
Hi, question for Mickey. I was wondering, how did you come to be acquired by Illumina in particular, and were you negotiating with a lot of other potential buyers?
So basically, Illumina heard about our technology from some customers. So we started working with quite a few customers, and that's how they heard about that. And then they reached out, and initially we were negotiating some other types of business relationships that made a lot of sense. So that's how we ended up kind of talking to them. And yes, we were. I mean, when the fire starts, it's kind of it goes quickly, and we were talking to a few other potential acquirers at the time.
Hi, my question for all the panelists: what kind of advice can you give for someone who only has an idea? I apologize if this question has been answered already.
Everything starts with an idea.
So I think the question really is what kind of idea. So I think there's a big difference between if this is a biotech startup you're doing, or it's more like a website or another social networking idea. So which type? Okay, I think if that's the case, I think for biotech, first of all, I don't have too much experience in it, but then I think that from what I know is that the science itself need to be really solid. I think that's probably where it can start, and then talking to other people who have started biotech companies, like the people who are sitting right beside me, so they will give you more ideas.
The anxiety that someone else is doing the same thing, or how do you deal with that? I mean, deal with that, and then the